Yeah, one of the things I was reflecting on, I think it was this morning, I was like, I've noticed categorically across the board for everybody that I interact, all the distributors that I interact with, right? You get luckier. You get luckier when you're like committed to principles and you trust yourself and you're always just moving and moving forward. You just get luckier. And of course, it would be with you that it'll be your friend's first time going to that upstairs section of the restaurant. It's just like this is how it goes, right? But that's wicked. And I'm just thinking of like Christine going from like prison life to like
oh my god,
VIP.
prison. Like,
That's your book. That's your memoirs
happening in Miami.
What would you say? It cut out a little bit, Christine?
Like the most illegal party happening in Miami, like it would be illegal in Canada. Like
Right.
It was literally no one's wearing masks, everyone's just having a great time. Like it's just like I haven't thought about COVID. I think I maybe thought about COVID like twice since I've been here. And really it's just like when you see someone else wearing a mask. Like it's actually insane, the extreme polarity of one reality in Canada and then the extreme opposite in Florida.
On this side, it's like people are thinking of quitting their jobs so they could go to the gin events because they'll have to quarantine for 2 weeks afterwards, and they don't know if their job could like handle that. It's so crazy. It's like such a dramatic difference. And there's like
that point that Christine just said, like how she hasn't thought about it. That's what they want, is you to thinking about it all the time.
Exactly.
You're always in a perpetual state of like, I mean, that's what a prison is. It's like you always have to be aware of like what you can or can't do.
Specifically within this like limitation of it, the first thing that you're thinking about when I'm telling people, I'm like, hey, like I traveled down to the US in November, December, right? When I came to the Copes. People are like, what? I thought you couldn't travel.
Dude, literally everyone has asked. Every time I post something that I'm here, I get like at least like 3 or 4 people being like, how did you leave the country? I'm like, what do you mean? You can travel.
Right.
I saw a bunch of people saying like they couldn't go to the gin event there in Canada because they didn't want to get the vaccine. I'm like, who told you had to get the vaccine?
Exactly.
But
you don't need the vaccine.
It's an assumption.
Yeah.
But it's also being impulsed on purpose. So subconsciously, unconsciously, you just know that.
And so that's the really interesting part is like the responsibility we have, or this is another reason why, another great example of how living the principles will always lead you to having the best life. Investigating all things means if you hear something, question it, right? Rather than being like, oh, everyone kind of has the same assumption. I guess that's the way it is.
Guess I'll just take the vaccine.
Right, exactly. People were telling me, they're like, man, I just had a friend who was telling me, they're so against the vaccine. I thought he's trying to play a soundbite.
I was trying to do the laughter when you said I'll take the vaccine.
We heard a little bit. But yeah, I had somebody sharing like, yeah, I was talking to somebody and they were telling me, oh yeah, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I'm kind of like, I'm not with that stuff. 2 weeks later, they have the vaccine. Because it's not direct. It's not, you guys see what I'm saying though?
So
there was a girl yesterday, literally, she with her job, she was like, I'm so against vaccine, but my employer said I had to get it. Otherwise I like couldn't work. So I got it and I told her, watch me get COVID after I get this vaccine. And she's like, sure enough, 2 weeks later, I tested positive for COVID. And she like works in healthcare and like takes care of
people. Doopsie.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
You're like, holy shit, man.
No, that's great. That's really cool.
I had a guy that I know and he told me he had COVID right when it first became a thing. Like he was traveling and
dude, he was like on the
early adopter.
He was like the
early
adopter. Guess what? He just got the vaccine. I'm like, wait, what? Didn't you get COVID? And he's like, well, yeah, but like my dad's a doctor and he said like, there's really no risk of getting the vaccine. And I just want to be sure. I'm like,
I'll just stop you right there. My dad's a doctor. I'm sold, dude.
It's like when you get the new iPhone, but then you wait for the MacBook Pro.
What? How is it like that?
Because it's like just products. That's all it is. It's just people buying into something like, oh, I got COVID, dude. Yeah, it's so tight.
Can you play that?
Yeah. Now watch it like every 3 months or 6 months. They're gonna be like, okay, you need your booster. Then it's like that Netflix subscription, right? And then they just got you and they got their cash cow going.
Oh, dude, that's genius. We should do that.
Yeah, but not with
We should
vaccines.
do that.
No, not
With
with
self-perfected merch, you know.
Yeah, but Mitchell, you have to understand supply and demand. Like if you want,
Self-perfected box.
what is that?
It's just like the box that comes in the mail every month.
It's a
It's a
curated.
subscription box. I like it.
It's a
Yeah.
curated box, right? Curated, great buzzword.
It's just straight up a box for holding stuff.
No.
Exactly.
It's just got a piece of paper with a bunch of links of videos to watch from Bernard.
It's literally the website, except just printed out.
No,
code?
we could put some stickers in there. We could put a t-shirt.
Whoa, Jess. You got to make them.
We're gonna
some
bring
content
costs
in there.
down. We're gonna bring costs down.
Temp tattoos.
Oh, yeah, temp tattoos. Yeah, tree of life.
No, you get a real tattoo because your principles are never temporary.
And oh shit, dude. And make the box like $500 because in terms of bringing costs down, you want to make sure that, for example, if Mitchell goes to ship it, Jess goes to ship it, it's paying for her time to go ship it. It's not about the
Yeah.
contents. You got to make the contents irrelevant. But you got to.
Yeah, exactly.
Need at least $1,000 for those boxes then.
Yeah, exactly.
Cameron, you were saying that you wanted to read something and then see if it's worth talking about because generally speaking, your ideas are pretty bad. So you just wanted to get feedback from us.
Oh shit.
He's sticking out his tongue.
Yeah. That's when he's concentrating.
Yeah. What was
I
that?
can't tell if you can hear it or not because it's like I
Yeah.
don't hear it. Right.
Yeah. You can.
Yeah. Okay. Let me.
Also, where are you, Cameron? It looks a little different
True.
this time.
Yeah. It looks like you're in a crack house
Oh, no,
with
it
multi
doesn't.
like
Come on now.
multi-million dollar equipment.
It looks like a renovated building turned into a podcast studio.
Yeah, like the other side's this is like brick with paint, and then they got the little things, and then the other side it's like really nice all wood. And it's like it's built into like another little shop that looks like they're still like renovating and everything. But yeah, the guy who runs this place, he just started it, like just opened it up. He lives here in I guess in town. And
Wow,
he's starting
perfect
his own
timing for you to
podcast.
come in.
He's starting his own podcast, and he said there's a bunch of people who who would be interested in a studio, so he's doing it for that, which is pretty cool. And then I was talking to the guy, and he was like, telling me some stuff. Like he runs a bed and breakfast in here in town, and he was like, it's on Polk Street, and I was like, which one's that? Because I'm still kind of getting familiar with everything. And he said, yeah, we run a breakfast there every morning, and so and so were there. Like I should know who they are. And I was like, look, I'm brand new, I don't know anything. And he goes, oh. He's like, well, I'll introduce you around. I said, I know so and so and so and so. He goes, oh, well, I work with them. And I was like, oh, cool. So he works at the university, like helping build their cyber defense training or something like that. And I'm having lunch on Tuesday with one of the guys who runs the nonprofit who is working with that university campus. And he also wants to start a K through 12 for gifted children. And he wants to know more about what we're doing. I'm like, well, I have gifted children, right? So we were talking a little bit, but we're gonna go have lunch on Tuesday. So
That's really cool.
everybody, it's really cool because like everybody knows each other, right?
Yeah.
And man, I had the newspaper with me. I must have put it down on the counter before I left the house, but I had the newspaper where Max and I were in the newspaper. I'll just show it on my phone. Hold on. I took a picture of it.
They spelled Carnegie wrong on it.
They did.
Yeah. You guys see that?
I didn't. I just saw the picture of them.
Lisa
Oh,
made a
look,
comment.
yeah.
She put at least they spelt your names right. And I was like, oh, what a funky comment. And then I saw the picture.
Oh, I didn't know what she was referring to.
They spelled Carnegie wrong.
Yeah. I noticed that. Now I'm
What
in
a
the,
mistake.
Dang, they need to go to the library.
But it's still awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, they did.
That's so cool.
But yeah, that's great.
Did I tell the story on the last podcast when I called in?
Yeah. I think
I did,
or
yeah,
maybe
I
it was a
thought so.
call.
Yeah, you did.
I think so. Anyways, that was pretty cool because then I was calling that guy, the guy I was talking about who I'm having lunch with on Tuesday. He had to call me actually. And then he mentioned that he was like, you know, you're in the paper, right? And I was like, oh, cool. Because I knew we were going to be, but I didn't actually know it was already printed.
The
So,
next one. Yeah.
so Max and Seneca and I went out to the grocery store to get a paper.
That's
That was
awesome.
kind of cool.
Guys,
Yeah, I
your,
mean, like
your reputation precedes
not
you
even a
now.
weekend and we're already in the paper like
Yeah.
that.
That's so
right?
cool. Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. And it seems like everybody kind of knows each other and everything, which is pretty interesting.
It's like
But
a real
yeah,
sense of community, right?
well, dude, it's interesting because living out here, you also have people who are super low vocabulary as well.
True.
Right. So, you know, a lot of people, even the people who are lower vocabulary, they still know, not all of them, but some of them like know like how to work the land. Like they know stuff that I don't know.
True.
so I can learn from them and get support from them. But when I'm talking to them, they're telling me all about their drama, and then this wife left them, and then she kept calling back every day and leaving voice
Damn.
messages for the other wife to hear, and the son's on probation, and he can't have his guns at his home, so he has to come to dad's house. And they're like, and I'm like, okay, they have a high vocabulary in this, but they're still very low vocabulary, right? So, you know, it's like I was talking to Katie about, you can't escape that. You can't go anywhere if you're going to be around other people. Like, so it just shows even more. I'm like, we have to take responsibility for supporting people to get effective educations, because there's benefits to being in somewhere like this. Everybody is really friendly. And like this guy, I'm talking about who runs the podcast studio. He's like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. Yeah, let's talk, and I'll introduce you to everybody, and so and forth. Like they're helpful in a genuine way, versus in the city. And it doesn't mean that they're not getting something out of it, but it's like in the city, what I notice generally is that people are more, they're wanting something out of it that's just purely emotional.
Right.
You know, it's like they want you to go do this or do that for them, but it's not really for you. They're not as helpful. Like I know for a fact here, if I ran out of water, like we had that freeze that happened or whatever, people would be coming up to our door like, hey, we have extra water. Do you want some? Without even asking. But in the city, you'd be outside and they'd be like, oh, did you run out of water? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they go back inside. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like everyone for themselves, right? But here it's like people are a little bit more grounded, a little bit more down to earth, you know? But there's still a lot of poverty. You know what I mean? There's still a lot of, and there's people who are wealthy. Like I'm just happened to be connecting with all the wealthy people in town. Like when we went to the library, it was like one of the guys who's on the board of directors from the library came out and was like, hey, thanks for coming in here. Can I take your picture? Like we want to put it in the newspaper and all this stuff. Right. And then now the other guy who like owns the title company and owns that nonprofit that's working with the university. And I guess he's one of the entrepreneurial types. He's like calling me up and all that stuff. Right. So it's kind of interesting being here. And what's also cool is we took the risk of coming out here from the perspective of we're totally shifting like what we're used to.
Right.
Having a lot of land, Jess knows, it's like a big responsibility. And then also it's like there's one grocery store here in town and it's all just like the cheapo name brands. It's like Coca-Cola and Cheetos and stuff. You don't want any of that. So we drove 25 minutes away to Marshall and we were thinking it's gonna be the same thing. And we found a grocery store that has everything that we would normally get, like organic produce, like nicer stuff, like not just the limited things. So we were like, oh, we were expecting like, well, we're just gonna have to get used to like not having those things, right? So little things like that where it actually worked out better than we expected. It's pretty cool. So that's been pretty cool. Like being able, it is an adjustment even for the kids and everything, but it's we took the risk to a certain degree and it actually is working out even better, which is pretty cool. So obviously we're going to build up that property and have it as a place where specifically Technotutor distributors can come and, you know, individually or like for like events and things and everything. And I was actually telling the guy who runs this place about that because he runs a bed and breakfast down the street. And I was like, he said they can hold like, they have like 14 rooms or something. And they do like a 2-course breakfast every morning there.
Oh,
you know,
shit.
yeah, it was like really, and there's like a bunch of bed and breakfasts here and like historic hotels. The one right down the street, it's called, I think it's called the Excelsior. And on the plaque, it said they've had Ulysses S. Grant stay there, not recently. And another President Hayes, and then also Oscar B. Wilde stayed there. And like, there's a lot of history to this town. So there's just like a lot of really cool, there's a historic hotel, also another historic hotel across the street.
What's it known for, Cam? Was it like an oil town or something, or?
It was a river port town.
A riverport?
Riverport, yeah. Like, so back before the railroads, everything was rivers. So if you had a river port, it was like your town was destined to become big,
Wow.
right? Like Houston has a shipping channel, right?
Yeah.
And apparently I was reading about it. The town was growing and growing and growing. And they were kind of like pushing back against the railroads coming through here. And then something in the government, I don't know who it was exactly, but like this council or state government or whatever, they passed some laws or something where they destroyed or removed the dams here so that the rivers or whatever, the water here became unnavigable. So then it was like, oh, oopsie, you know, and then like, here come the railroads,
Damn.
right? Yeah, it's really interesting reading about that. So And I was reading this random article like some townspeople gave us. BuzzFeed, of course, you know BuzzFeed, right? But they ranked this town second of like, best small towns in America. And then another one was like 26 out of 30. You know, everyone has a different
America.
list, obviously. Yeah. So it's actually like and what's cool is when you're here, it doesn't feel like a dump. You know, there's some towns where it's like you go through and it's just a gas station and some rundown stuff. And you're like, just, but this, it's like it has a downtown. I mean, it has a podcast studio downtown.
Yeah.
Like there's only
That's
2,000
pretty-
people in this town.
2000, I was
pretty
gonna say that's
non-rural.
how many people were in the town that I grew up in.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So you
2,000.
know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
But
They definitely
apparently-
don't have a podcast studio.
So
there.
okay, so let me contrast everything Cameron's saying, just to give you perspective on his town. He has the same amount of people as what I grew up with. My town has 2 bars that both serve food. They have 1 Subway. They have
You have a
PlayStation.
Subway in a town of 2,000 people?
Like
where's
the
that
sandwich,
going?
the sandwich.
No,
place?
Not
they're
that
getting
Subway,
they're
Jay.
getting high speed rail later.
Okay.
No,
The one
but-
with Jared.
but listen. They,
Wait, real quick.
they-
You're talking about the restaurant, right? Like the
Yeah. Yes.
sandwich
Okay.
shop.
and then they have, I think they have like secondhand stores, an alcohol store, a dollar store,
Yeah.
a little grocery store like Cameron talks about.
So it's like one of those towns I was talking about where you go through it and you're like, yeah, I wouldn't even.
That's
stop here
it.
except for
Yeah.
gas.
You guys also have a hotel where the presidents stayed, right?
No.
The president,
We
the
have
president of
one.
Subway.
We have one little motel. We have one little tiny motel. I think it's running. I don't know. I never really know when I go by there because I don't see people there and it's kind of sketchy looking. But there is a motel. I think it's physically there. So
So
It's
that's the
inhabited by
place
something.
where poor people try to get out of, and that's the place where apparently rich people go to stay.
Yeah. This town was one of the main reasons we chose the place that we did because there were several
Oh.
properties we were looking at, and then this one doesn't have a college in it, so it doesn't have a university. So that was even a more attractive point because you're not going to get all that stuff going on.
What stuff?
Um,
What stuff?
Well, primarily what I mean by that is
Those young folk.
no, I mean the universities, especially now, are becoming more and more infiltrated by all of the
Ideology.
diversity, equity, inclusion, all that shit, right? So it's like when there was another town we were looking at and you could see like kids running around with like blue hair and stuff. And I was like, oh, it's a university town. Cause like,
Interesting.
I don't ever imagine there's going to be like a Black Lives Matter protest through the streets here,
Right.
right?
I don't know. I'm
So-
coming up there, in November. So
When you come here, I will be protesting Black Lives.
Again.
Oh shit, I'm broadcasting. Forgot to turn off the speaker. Everyone's out there like, yeah. But no, like one other thing I was going to add is it's apparently Katie was talking to them. She was like, oh, it must have been very difficult here during the whole pandemic and everything. And they said, actually, they did very well here because this is a place where lots of people come to. Like, so there's a lot of like, I guess you could call it tourists, but it's just people, coming to this town to like go to the little, cafe with the
the doll
chocolate
room.
shock and, but just like there's like little shops and stuff and antique stores and stuff like
That's
that.
cool.
So it's like a cute place just to come to. But there's a lot of practical functionality too, which is pretty neat.
Is this the
So-
same town that when you guys were visiting, it has that hotel with the doll room in it? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
doll room?
Yeah, that's not the one I was referring to earlier. When I said
Right.
there's also another historic hotel, that's the one I was referring to. It's just, I can
Right.
see it right over there. But yeah, that was one I was looking at y'all staying at when you come down here, assuming that we don't have enough room at the house.
In the
Um,
doll room.
But it was
we
the only
were
hotel I knew of.
we were thinking about taking our new truck and
Oh.
getting a tent.
Oh.
But then you
Bringing
told
the
us about
tent
that
on the
spider.
land.
And then I was like, okay, we definitely got to bring our guns. So then I was like researching, can we bring our guns across state lines? So
to
anyway.
shoot the spiders?
I'm not gonna
Dude,
shoot the spider.
you
I saw,
knows,
I saw
man.
another one, by the way. We saw
Yeah.
another one on the outside of the sliding glass door. It was like a smaller one, like that big, but it was the same type of spider. Yeah.
Oh,
And I
okay.
said, I go, oh, it's that same.
Nice.
I go, it's the same one as before. And Max goes, no, Cam, that's not the same one. I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's the same kind. He goes, well, yeah, but it's not the same one. That one's much smaller. I think that's a younger one.
Oh,
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Nuance.
Oh, snap.
Oh, okay. I got something. I reposted a picture of Max reading like a big fat chapter book. And I just said, you know, this is what kids who have techno tutor are doing at 4 years old or something like that. And somebody commented and said, this is what all 4-year-olds are doing or something like that. And I'm like,
Where you
Okay.
live,
Let's-
Really?
let's investigate and look at all the 4-year-olds you know. Are they taking their time out of the day without being told they have to go read? Because most of them, first of all, can't read, but irrelevant, even regardless, right? If they could, are they just naturally wanting to go and read and learn throughout the day?
That's not happening.
Oh, Cam, you got a little fly coming in. Did you catch it?
I just want everyone to know how fucking badass I am.
Caught a fly. For those of you who are on camera right now, Cameron caught
And-
a fly.
He's still alive.
Oh!
Texas.
For those of you who are
Dude,
just
I just had a
listening-
Mr. Miyagi
easy.
flashback.
Yeah, Christine, the fly just crawled across the camera.
See that?
For those of you
Trying to make
who are
his
listening,
debut.
Cameron caught a bug off right in front of his hat, nicked himself a little bit, but he's okay. And then he opened his hand, the fly was still alive, and then he showed his Texas boots at the end of all of that. So
Oh, I
I
missed that
recommend-
part.
That was like beyond a spell. I
Hashtag
didn't
team
know
life,
what-
baby.
what
Team
the
life
word
Hashtag team
hat.
life. Now Cameron's
Hashtag team
flexing the
life.
team life hat. Cameron, get those horns on that freaking thing, man. You have horns? Need some better.
Oh,
sound.
oh, that would be amazing. Yeah.
When
What
you
was the thing that
caught
you
the
wanted to
fly,
read?
it reminded me of Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi, Mr. Miyagi shit for sure. Cameron, what was the thing that you wanted to read at the very beginning?
I'll give some context.
Oh shit, dude.
I was talking with someone on Facebook, as one does, and they were basically arguing for their limitations, and what I said to them was, you know, what you're doing. I mean, I'm paraphrasing myself, but basically I'm saying what you're doing is not best. You should not do what feels good, what would be considered the easy thing that feels good, but do the hard thing, right? And their response to me was, why does, I think they said also, like, you know, don't you want your family to be happy? Because I think that's what they were justifying their decision based on, was that they wanted their family to be happy, right? And they said, don't you want your family to be happy? And again, I'm paraphrasing, so it doesn't matter if I'm representing it properly. I'm just going to give some perspective on this point. But they said, don't you want your family to be happy? And why do you have to be hard on yourself, or why does it have to be a struggle for you to be happy? Right.
Mm.
And like basically kind of suggesting that from what I was saying, that it's creating a polarity between, you either have to choose between happiness, or you have to, everything has to be hard and struggle and so forth.
Mm.
But that's not what and then what I said was, you don't have a right to happiness, right? Until we create that right for everybody, you don't have a right to it, right? So I said, stop chasing happiness, stop chasing it, right? And I'm noticing some people are also commenting on there and so forth. But then somebody made a statement later on, and I'm not trying to call people out or anything on the podcast, so I'll just read it. But we won't. It doesn't really matter who said it; it's kind of irrelevant. But let me just read it, okay? And you guys can give me y'all's perspective too on it. So let's look at this, because in a sense, I don't disagree with it, but I think, you know, okay, why are we making this podcast? Are we doing it for everybody in the general public?
Because we want to get famous.
You know what I mean? Or are we doing it because we want to support those who we're walking with? Like, if anybody else in this group made a podcast, I'd be listening to that. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're the ones who have the podcast. No one else does a podcast. You listen to us. We're the authorities. No, we're sharing from ourselves, our perspective. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. We're not claiming that anyone has to do what we're saying, but we're not going to just also say, oh, so, it's just our opinions and you have your own opinions. No, like we're right. Okay. If you think we're wrong, then make your own podcast and explain your perspective and show how we're wrong. Don't just say, don't talk vaguely or generally, right? Be specific, right? So anyway, so this person says, and we can break it down. Caring about all life and creating solutions for this world doesn't mean you have to harden your heart against doing what makes you happy. It's about self-trust. When you trust yourself to live and that you will see and find the way that is best for all, instead of designing your behavior as control around a moral polarity design, then you get to find out what's real and what's not about your desires, your wants, your happiness, and the way you live your principles. If you harden up, then you are trying to protect something, but it's not your principles. You are being hard on yourself to protect yourself from feeling like you are doing the wrong thing. You have to give up wanting to do the right thing to be able to discover and do the best thing as it relates to you and your position, your life, your circumstance, your mind, and being and expression. There comes a point in your process when you need to let go of the fear of going back to your old ways or acting in self-interest or falling in your process. Those fears will cause you to remain a follower rather than discovering your true leadership. Okay, which is pretty cool, right? But what I wanted to perhaps look at is this point of like happiness, and to clarify, at least for myself, and I want to hear what you guys have to say too, obviously, is like, what does it mean when I say stop chasing happiness?
Or you don't have a right to happiness. I also see how that could be a vagary for people.
So yeah, so I'm gonna handle the objection that I think would come up within people, which is therefore what I must be saying then is, in order to do this process, to stand up, to be in self-perfected destiny, stand up and change the world and so forth, everything we've been saying, you have to be unhappy.
You can't be
Yeah.
happy.
And you can't be happy. And you shouldn't be happy. Which is definitely not what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So if you look at like Mitchell and I throughout this process, we've enjoyed ourselves very much so. I'm very happy. But that's a result of the choices I made that weren't easy, that weren't like happy at the time. At the time, it's hard. It sometimes can be frustrating. It can literally be going against all the patterns you've ever created in your whole life. It can be scary, painful, excruciating, frustrating, seemingly debilitating. But the happiness that you get from working through those points is infinitely better than making a decision based on being happy in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is how
Yeah,
I would say
I think that's the key point, is that happiness in the moment versus the long-term point. What were you going to say, Mitch? It seemed like you were going to.
Well, yeah, and that's like the whole delayed gratification thing, because we make plenty of someone from the outside would call it a sacrifice, and staying up late, waking up early, just pouring your heart and soul into doing something, and it doesn't feel good. A lot of the time, it kind of sucks. If I'm looking at it just from like how I feel in it,
yeah.
but there are also moments where it's really great. But I've learned, and this has taken me a while to direct myself, is it doesn't really matter how I'm feeling in the process, because I realize what we're building long term is creating that system. So it's like, in a sense, yeah, it's dedicating myself, postponing my happiness of, oh yeah, it'd be fun today to just go, I don't know, eat some dessert and go like walk around and I don't know, not do work type stuff.
Mhm.
But that happiness is going to be temporary. It's going to be fleeting. We're going to still wake up tomorrow, and we still got a reality where there's all this suffering and it's getting perpetually worse.
And there are some days also where you do that, right? Like you just
Yeah.
have a day maybe, or some time where you go do something fun too, right?
So
Yeah, exactly.
It's a balance. It's finding a way to push the balance as much as you can, where you you can do more throughout the day, but then you find that little bit of time where you're like, okay, here I can unplug. I can be like doing something with my partner or something like that. Because at least for Mitchell and I, we currently don't have children. So we have the space to really focus on what we're doing, what we're building, what we're creating. And during the day, while we're really focusing on all those things, it's not always fun. It's not like in that moment I feel good because I get to cook every meal and I get to do all the dishes all the time, and I get to clean the house, like all this point, like that stuff. I'm not saying that in a way that it's charged in the moment here, but it's like at the time there, sometimes I don't feel like doing the dishes. Sometimes I look at the pile of dishes and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, but I know it needs to be done and I'm going to do it anyways.
I don't always feel like doing this podcast.
Yeah.
But it's like that's just the commitment that we've made, though.
Right. Like
We
there's
just
many
show
times
up.
where I'm like, oh, like I'd rather just relax or whatever. I mean, it's not all the time, but there's been many times where it's like, oh, I have to now do the podcast all day. But then I breathe. I'm like, I'm not changing whether I'm doing it based on that. And the only reason I'm feeling that way is because I'm participating in this feeling like I need to go somewhere else to feel good or happy. And in that moment I go, but I know I can have fun doing the podcast. So it's my mind trying to tell me it's going to be bad or it's like something I don't want to do, but that's not actually true.
Yeah.
So, here's a point we can look at, which is, it's like when I'm looking at being happy, there's many things that I do where the result of it is I feel happy. There's a lot of things I do where in the moment, I don't feel happy doing it. And those are sometimes mutually exclusive, sometimes not, meaning I can do something that doesn't feel good, but it's best, and then I feel good about it later. I can do something that does feel good and it is best, and I feel good about it later too. So it's not like because you're doing what's best, it must make you unhappy in the moment. It doesn't. But let's just look at the practical reality that we live in. Does everyone have their basic needs met?
No.
Right.
They don't. So how much of my life, your children's lives is in a sense dictated by that basic fact?
Okay, two things here. As you were speaking, this just came to my mind. One thing that I know doesn't make anyone feel happy, but they do it anyway, well, at least if you have kids, is you wipe your kid's ass, right? Like there's shit there, it smells, it's not fun. It happens multiple times a day, right? Especially if they're still in diapers, but
even when they're not, like we still wipe our kids' butts from time to time just to make sure they're getting them clean because they're still
exactly. But when you do that, and if they are in diapers, when you do that, you feel kind of like a relief because they're not going to get a rash later. Like they're clean. They're taken care of. It doesn't make you happy in the moment to do that, but you have to do it. You get it done, right? Now taking that like more broad scope, as far as like where you're, I think you're heading down this route, but following the way I see following your bliss, right? Where people will take that to mean in a moment, instant gratification, just do whatever makes me happy in this moment. But even in like your wish is your command, where KT's saying, to do what makes you feel good, right? He's also explaining you need to have delayed gratification, right?
Yeah.
And what I see within that is what would actually ultimately be very blissful would be everyone having their basic needs met. And here's the juxtaposition here is, okay, if I don't go and get ice cream today, that's acceptable. That's fine. That's okay. If you don't eat, that's not acceptable. If you're not like actually surviving even, that's not an acceptable world that I want to create. And so what would actually be the most fulfilling would be to take care of those things that would make us happy, would be ultimately blissful, right? And removes all those things that are unacceptable, as opposed to focusing on those things that like, hey, if I go without this, that's okay, whatever,
Yeah.
But that's what people focus on to give them their happiness. What are you saying?
So with all that you're saying, and Jess made a point earlier about like finding a balance in it too, because there is some times where you do want to get the ice cream and it's okay, and it's like, you can enjoy the ice cream. I see that gets abused though a lot.
Mm.
Like this, oh well, I just got to keep this balance though, because like, I don't want to go too all out or
I
anything.
don't want to get burnt out.
Yeah, and that is such bullshit, because you're capable of so much more than you ever thought. And so for myself, I really tested that, because when I first, even before I was with Jess, it's like I would see how much I could do, but I was like almost afraid of it, of like, oh, like if I keep doing that, I'm gonna get burned out. I don't know. Who am I to go up against the system and like get into politics and that kind of thing? But then I had Jess, and then I was like, you know what? I have enough support. Let me just go all out. So I really experimented with what it's like to go all out, to actually live my utmost potential. And that is like, it's beyond what any sense of this, like, it's like this bastardized version of balance, of where you're like, well, yeah, it's good enough. Like, don't rock the boat too much. It's like, how about we do rock the boat to the max,
Yeah.
and then figure out what we're capable of,
Nice.
and then figure it out along the way.
That's cool.
That concept of balance, the false one that you're talking about, that's just self-sabotage.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, I'm about to do more. Oh, maybe I shouldn't. And it's just your ego bringing you back down. Like, hey, don't fucking do anything that would actually challenge the system.
Yeah.
I have the self-honesty to know that when I hear the word balance, I think of 50-50, like even, right? And that's always the thing I should process that point to integrate it physically, but it's not a 50-50 balance. The balance isn't equal weight on each, right? It's about, there's the starting point of, and here's the thing, the difficult part about it is within the context of whoever's listening to this is at, they might be at a job that they don't like and things like that. And it's stressing them out, or they have to suppress a lot, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, we'll talk about the vicious cycle of the system, which is designed to stress you the fuck out. So all you can focus on with the money, the little bit of money that you earn, is de-stressing, right? And the reason why that's such a vicious cycle is because you never actually, it has to come from within you. The entrepreneur is not some lifestyle of business and all that stuff. It's being a risk taker. And part of taking risk is providing for yourself, developing that ability, because that's the only thing that can pull you out of that vicious cycle. The main point here is, it's not just about, oh, it's like, I'm stressed at my job, therefore I got to find out how to not be stressed at my job. It's actually bigger than that. You guys see what I'm saying? Like, that's
absolutely, yeah.
Right. When we listen to Your Wish Is Your Command or whatever the thing, it's like, okay, how do I keep everything the same, but change my mindset? Because it's only about my mindset, not realizing that actually it's the things that you're doing that are causing you don't have an opportunity within your work. Like, work does not equal love made real for you. That's why it's always going to feel like you have to suppress in order to do that. Also, that's a factor in this world system, right? But I can confidently, certainly say that being able to express myself in the context of what I do for work, and the way I'm saying work is from the perspective of what I do to earn money, TechnoTutor. It's like, I never thought that you can earn money based on standing up for something real. I thought, like, by definition, it's like you have your personal life and all your beliefs and your religion and all that stuff, and then you have work. Keep them separate, right? Don't take that shit to work, and don't take work home, right?
Yeah.
But it's the coolest thing to actually have integrity or integral or whole living. It's like, it is my life, and I just share my life because the starting point of my life is to change the system to one that is actually providing for everybody. Until I'm doing that for myself, I'm going to be stressed out. You created the circumstances and consequences in your life based off our education that creates a stressful environment. So the other point is the education point about what actually fucking feels good. Because we all have that idea that if we go with what we feel, right? I was talking to somebody the other day. They're saying, well, what about my inner guidance system? I said, what about your inner guidance system? Like, aren't I supposed to follow that in order to, find my way to my higher self? I'm like, what higher self, right? But the person was teachable, right? It was cool. Because I remember going through the same stuff, right? I'm like, your higher self is, 5 to 6 feet off the ground. It's right here, right? You hear that from Avery before. It's called your ego. And really, it's the complete opposite. You're actually here to walk yourself out of your higher self back onto the fucking ground so you can move forward, right? And so the point of your inner guidance system or your emotional guidance system, what your actual guidance system is, it's your vocabulary. It's the way that you're taking in information and it's speaking to you, telling you what to do. And the point of your emotional guidance system is to show you the limitation of your vocabulary. Don't follow your feelings. Use your feelings as an indicator of where you don't understand something, because by definition, the word emotion is when you don't have the reason or knowledge of something. You experience this thing called emotion because you can't, I just can't explain it. It just makes me feel so good. Then you'll never be able to replicate that feeling. But if you realize, oh, damn, the reason that felt so good is because I actually supported somebody like to really make a difference in their lives. Let me focus on that. Let me focus on giving. Let me focus on how do I do that to the best degree possible, for example.
Yeah. Want to know what feels really good? Having a bunch of different clients that are all, paying you. So there's compensation, but then you supporting them where they're now making decisions, for example, to stay in a relationship when they're about to leave. Wow. And to take that responsibility for their kids and their kids' development, or to talk someone through a really difficult decision, but that's ultimately going to get them financial freedom instead of staying safe in their comfort zone where they feel, where they're not happy, but it's, they're stuck in there. That is amazing. And that's what you get with TechnoTutor. And that is like, I never thought that was possible. I thought, yeah, you just kind of got to go either get a 9 to 5 or like build something and kind of sacrifice. And it's like you were saying, Asif, it's integral. It's like, that's just your life. It's just who you are.
See, I also have a different perspective to bring of creating an illusion for myself that I had integrated everything previously, where it's like, I thought no matter what work I had, no matter what I was doing, I was improving that place and improving the people around me and improving anyone who came to that establishment type of thing. Right. And thus everything was integrated.
That's like a slave mentality, actually.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm fitting into my little part and therefore everybody is, I mean, I know, like, but that's what it is, right? It's something that you are convinced to do by the system, so you won't fucking challenge it and you'll just accept your little part.
Exactly. I'm supposed to play my role to the best of my ability.
Yeah, it's like, but I make sure everybody's coffee is filled up and everyone's happy, and that's just what I do. And I add to this world.
That makes all the difference. I'm really affecting reality.
It's like, yeah, but there's children over here being abused. There's people over here. I mean,
but also it can be very deceptive because when you're managing a care home of people with mental disabilities and you're actually improving their lives while you're there, it's like a superficial gratification where you feel as though, and maybe in a micro way, you're improving life there in that moment. But you're not actually creating a system that supports that in its entirety. You're still participating in the abuse that the system is still creating for them. Yeah. So it's still abusive, even though you think you're making it better because you see these little moments where it's like, oh, they're happy.
Well, and none of us have actually been pre-programmed for any sort of success, like actually, and to do what's best. Right. So then when you get introduced to something like the law of attraction, or you listen to Kevin Trudeau and your wish is your command, it's like when you hear something like follow your bliss, it's like you're not pre-programmed to actually know what that really means.
Interpret that correctly.
Yeah, so you're interpreting in a very low vocabulary way. And then also it's like, it ends up just being, because I went through this, where it's like, you're just avoiding feeling bad. Right. And then when you're not feeling bad, it's, oh, I'm not in alignment. And then when you're feeling good, it's like, oh, I'm in alignment. But it's like, it's such a roller coaster.
Alignment with what? You know what I mean? It's like this thing that comes natural to you that was programmed into you. That's really well said. It's like, when we talk about vocabulary, we don't just mean learn words. Like the most important part of Destiny and why it's so significant, why you can't just use TechnoTutor, you need to use TechnoTutor in order to integrate the solution into yourself. And the solution is the actual vocabulary of change. The actual so you can become aware, self-aware of, one, what is fear? And two, when am I participating in it? And three, when I am, what the fuck do I do? Because that alone, in terms of becoming really clear about how to define my experiential, how to define my experience of myself in a way that I can become self-aware in a moment and then have the game plan to pull me out of it. That's TechnoTutor and Destiny. And then when I'm not in that, what do I need to be doing in order to be successful? That's Jin. Marrying the two things together, right? And I think so along with what Christina's saying, we've come to define, it's like, what would be so fulfilling to you? It's like working a fucking, like, what is it? Opening a restaurant. It's like, I'm sure you guys can consider the reality of opening, hiring, and managing a fucking restaurant. I have friends who did it. They're not doing it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, right? But we think of it about it so one-dimensionally. And what's the dimension that we're considering? How is it going to make me feel?
Mhm.
It's not accurate.
Or when I have that thing and I reflect on the image, how will I feel inside based on that picture? Which it won't be that picture anyways.
That is the best, most accurate way to describe it. It's when I have the thing and I think about who I am in my mind, I'm going to be like, damn, I made it. But what's Jeff Bezos thinking about? Like, okay, how do I want to feel good?
If you think about it,
biggest fucking business that the world has ever seen, and monopolize an entire industry and change the world.
and then get divorced.
Right.
Again,
that wasn't part of his plan, right? He wasn't in full consideration, right?
But
And so
it's
that's
like, it's like, here's something I'm just keep looking at. What does it mean to be happy? Like, how do we define when we're happy?
ooh, nice.
Well,
And-
so
yeah.
the root of happy is like to happen across something. It's like an element of luck almost. It's like, oh, it just like kind of came about. So that's what we need to redefine.
Why is being happy the most important thing? So like, for example, like I'm going to read one more comment that someone put in here in the context of that thread.
What
Listen
makes
to this.
happiness significant?
This person said, don't you want your family to be happy? Is it not possible to, quote, do the hard thing while being happy? Does fighting the good fight have to imply sacrifice and suffering? So
Fighting the good fight. I love it when people say that.
it says, don't you want your family to be happy? The answer to that is yes. Right? It's like Max wanted a drone. Okay. And
Wait,
he's
is this
like,
recent or like? From
yeah, like just yesterday.
I just remember, just to
He said
give
he
a
wanted a
context.
drone, right?
Like I remember, like when he wanted a drone when he was like 2.5, and he would just fly them and crash them and break them.
Yeah. We've gone through a lot of those little
It
drones,
was so funny, yeah.
but we haven't had one in a long time. But now he's asking me to have a drone again, right? So I looked it up and I was looking on Amazon, and he goes, no, let's just go get one in town. And I said, well, you know, where we're at right now, there's not a place that's going to have a drone, right? There's nothing that's going to be open that's near us that's going to have that. This is something we're going to have to order on Amazon. And I could see he was disappointed for that moment, right?
Do you think it's because he wanted it like today kind of thing, or?
Well, yeah, I'm explaining. So he was like, well, I want to just get it in town. And I said, is it because you just want to go into town, or is it because you want it like today? And he goes, well, I want it today. And I said, well, that's not possible. So do you just want a drone today, or do you want a drone? And he was like, well, I want a drone. I was like, even if we can't get it today, do you still want one that might come in a few days or a week? And he's like, you know, I want a drone.
Interesting. Wow.
So if somebody said to me, do you want your family to be happy? And I said, yes. And it's like, well, then therefore they should be happy right now.
right.
It's like, well, okay, let me ask you a question. Let's say I told you right now, guys, I figured out the secret. I am happy. My family is happy. What would be your first question?
What does happiness even mean then?
You want to know my first question? If somebody told me they were totally happy, you guys know I do this.
Yeah.
Really? Didn't you know that 20,000 people die of starvation every day? Children, unpreventable causes?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you didn't know that? Yeah, it's true though. Look it up. Yeah. Okay. You still happy? Now, what's the next thing they're going to say if they're not being self-honest?
What's
Yeah.
that have to do with me?
Like, hey, everyone creates their own reality, man. I created my happiness. They can create their own happiness.
Yeah.
Like, really, how did you create your happiness? Do you have enough food every day? Yeah. Do you have good relationships? Yeah. Do you have a partner? You have sex, all these points? Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a shelter? You have good clothing? Yeah. You have internet? Yeah. I have all those things. So you have everything you need, right? Everything you want. Yeah. Yeah. Well, why do you deserve that?
I worked hard for it.
You enslaved other people.
They would say they didn't do that.
Right. Why?
They don't understand the nature of the system.
They can't see it.
That
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
every dollar they spend, that's voting for the enslavement instead
They're
of standing up.
fucking stupid.
Yeah, they can't process it.
They can't and like, now whose responsibility is it to help them understand? Mine in that moment. I'm the one presenting the point, right? So it doesn't mean I can convince them necessarily, but what do I know first? They're not going to fucking understand. Even if I give the most perfect logical argument, they're still not going to process it. Why? Because they can't process those words, because their definition of certain words within themselves physically is da da da, but it's not everything. It's not complete. So like Asif, when he said integrity and he said whole, most people don't even understand that. They think integrity means you don't lie to people,
Right. Right.
all these other things. Like, oh, you don't have integrity because you lied to me. It's like, well, like if a fucking person was sitting in a burning building and I'm like, the building's on fire, and they're like, no, it's not. And I was like, they're not getting out of the building. I'm like, there's a parade outside. Come look at it. And they're like, really? And they run out the building like, what? I don't have any integrity because I lied. I mean, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
but Amazon has integrity because they always make sure if you want to return your product because it didn't work, they give you a refund. So that's real integrity, but they pay their workers nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like people's idea of integrity, it's not the real full definition of it. So within all of the words that I would be using to explain to somebody why they've enslaved others to get their happiness, because they have access to money, all the things people say like, well, happiness doesn't come from money. Okay, let me take all your money and then let's see if you're happy.
Not weird. What do
You say, oh, but the Dalai Lama, he's just so happy. Like the dude lives like a fucking king.
Yeah.
I mean, he also does a bunch of weird shit, like sit there and like for like 5 hours at a time. But he was programmed to do that from birth. So it's not like you could go do that and it's going to make you happy. Like he was fucking abused as a child, told he is the reincarnation of some fucking llama or something. I don't know. And they programmed him to fucking sit and meditate for hours. And if he didn't, they fucking hit him with a stick and they probably molested him too. Like you're around all these fucking hundreds of monks who can't have sex. And like, what? They're not going to molest these kids? Give me a break. And then you think it's so holy and everything. And what is the guy's real solution? No solution. No, nobody in any of these positions has any real solution. But then what does the Dalai Lama do though? He says, we must love each other. You know, it is all about compassion and giving and all these things, right? So you're like, wow, man, what a holy person. He's amazing. And then here I come, or you or anybody else, and says, guys, we are fucking raping and abusing and enslaving other people so that we can have happiness, and we're participating in it. And all we're asking is for you to wake the fuck up, stand up in the system, change the system so to make sure also everyone else has what they need. Before you expect that you have it, you should make sure they have it. But here's the interesting thing. If we don't take care of our basics, are we going to be able to stand up and do anything?
Yeah, you can't.
What do you need beyond the basics to be happy?
Nothing.
Can any of you tell me one thing beyond the basic shit that you need to be happy? Like from my perspective, having a working computer that's a good computer is a basic need.
You know,
You say, that's not a basic need, that's a luxury. Nobody has that. I'm like, yeah, that's my fucking point. What were you gonna say, Drake?
I was gonna say, like, I think most people, when they're making the argument of you don't need money to be happy, they're saying you just need the basics to be happy. They're saying, well, at least subconsciously, unconsciously, they're saying like, you know, you don't need those luxury things to be happy, because you should, when you have all your needs met, then you can be happy, like just being here. And I agree with that, you know?
But they're not being honest about the fact that you need money, which is why they have a job,
Right.
right? They have a job so they can have money, so they can get at least those basic things. And then what the real thing is most people 99% of the time are not actually happy, even
Yeah.
with those points that they think they have. And most of the time they're unhappy, but they hold on to those moments of happiness and they use it to justify, because they would rather do that than admit that they're not fucking happy. I was talking to someone the other day and we were going through this whole point, and he was really like facing the point that his whole life he's been chasing the wrong thing, getting to a certain point, and then it crashes down and he tries to rebuild it and it keeps happening. And he was starting to understand why, because we were talking about it. And at a certain point, I said to him, because he said something, and I said to him, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, and I think it was because of something he said. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Are you actually happy? And he goes, oh yeah, I'm pretty good. Like, actually things are pretty good most of the time. Right. And like, that's like the person who was just totally like devastated 5 seconds ago. The moment I asked that question, suddenly they're like a different person. Like, oh yeah, I mean, things are good. And I'm like, it's like if somebody called you and said, my wife just died in a fire and my kids are in the hospital. My life has fallen apart. And you're like, oh, that's terrible, man. Like, how are things going in your life? And they're like, oh yeah, things are good. Good, guys. Everything's good, bro. Yeah, yeah. But anyways, my whole life is just terrible. And you're like, what? So I said to him, I said, look,
I've seen that.
Remember earlier I told you that I'm going to be direct with you. And some people don't like that, but that's what I'm going to do. I said, here's one of those moments where I'm going to be direct with you. I said, you're not happy. Your life is not happy most of the time. Everything you just explained to me proves that. So why are you not being honest with yourself? And he was like, oh shit, you're right. He's like, you're right. Yes. He's like, wow, thank you for being direct with me. Because it's like, he just went into a possession of, no, I'm good. It's all good. It's like, but why are we even talking then? So what happens is people go into this point of like, yeah, I'm happy. Everything's good. I'm happy.
It's like this emotional amnesia, I call it. It's like
but
literally.
It's also, I'm in the middle of making decisions that are not best. And I want to keep doing it, and don't fuck with me because I'm feeling good about it right now. And what are you talking about? I'm not happy, because I'm saying it's going to fuck you over. But it's kind of like, who are you? What the fuck do you know about me and my life? You don't know anything. Like, what do you know makes me happy? You don't know what makes me happy. And I'm like, you are me in another life. So how the fuck would I not know what makes you happy? When someone says to you, how can you tell me what's best? I'm like, because you're me. That'd be like one grasshopper talking to another grasshopper. And this one grasshopper is like, you don't know what makes me happy. And he's like, yeah, dude, like fucking eating these wheat
grass and hopping,
whatever, like and hopping around and shit, like, and like not getting eaten by birds. And he's like, dude, come on, you're just trying to control me. You don't know what makes me happy. You have no idea. And it's like, yeah, I do. Like, if I'm honest with myself, then I know what you're doing. I know what you're participating in, because I'm listening to your words. And if I was saying that, here's exactly what I'm thinking. That's just processing ability. That's not me being special. That's just building my vocabulary, using TechnoTutor every fucking day, failing, learning from that, building my vocabulary further, because it's like sometimes you don't know where the bricks in your, or the cracks in your brick wall are.
You know, I just want to hit that point again, because you said it so simply, but it's basically like every being, every human has their basics that is going to make you happy. Like just being human, these are the things that are going to make you happy. Having good food, having clean water, like being in good health, having good sex, like having relationships, all these things are going to make everybody happy, every human being happy, right? But we've been so indoctrinated, confused in our own minds that we think we have all these like special, unique things that make us all individual. And like, no, so you can't know what makes me happy. No, like you're fucked, dude. Like there's these things.
All of those things you were suppressed by someone who abused you when you were young, and now you feel like you don't have a right to do and express certain things.
Right.
So then it becomes like, I need to be like an artist to be able to express all these things inside of me. And it's like, you have nothing fucking unique to say. You're just painting a picture of a flower in a new way. Like,
I'm so glad you brought that up because it really is just that. Like if people had their basics, they would have that happiness that they're talking about. And this is why, like, when you're talking to somebody and they're like, yeah, like I just don't know what to do with my life. Like my relationship's going to shit, and work's kind of, it's like I'll ask them the same question, whether it be the next day. And I know nothing has been solved. They're like trying to work through it, whatever. And I'd be like, are you happy? And I'd be like, yeah, I got a good job and, I'm alive. It's like, so when you're talking about happiness in the context of what you want, it's like this big grandiose thing that you don't give a fuck about anybody else. You just want this thing. But then it's like when you're trying to justify being happy, as in don't try to fuck with what I have. Look, I have a job. And that's what everybody looks up to. I have that, so I'm happy. I have the relationship, so I'm happy. So it's like this split of like defining happiness as the survival point and happiness as I want this, I want everything.
What would you say?
I've got an image for you real quick, okay?
Go ahead.
Just check out this image, all right? I want you to imagine a field and there's slaves and they're picking cotton, okay? And there's this one slave, let's say there's two women slaves, right? And they're talking to each other, right? And she's like, so how's everything going, with you and your husband and everything? And the woman's like, I don't know. I just need to get out of that marriage because I just don't feel free in it. And so she goes home that night and she divorces her husband and she says, I just need to be free and I don't feel free. I feel trapped in this relationship. And then she starts fucking her next door neighbor. And then she's back in the fields that day. She's like, I feel so alive. I'm so amazing and free and happy. And she's still picking cotton on the fucking slave plantation.
Yeah.
So how was that happiness? How was that freedom? So if this is the problem, it's like, if somebody's going to say, well, don't you want to be happy? I mean, why does everything have to be like, it's a choice between being happy or doing what's best or struggle or all this stuff. It's like, why don't you accept that you don't have a right to happiness? Does that mean I'm telling you you shouldn't be happy?
No.
Let me ask you a question. Does everyone have a right to clean drinking water?
They should. But they
So
don't.
if somebody came up to me right now and was like, dude, why I have a right to clean drinking water. Like, how dare you? And I'm like, you don't. I'm sorry, you don't. So let's fucking do some shit that is hard to do right now, that I don't want to do, that doesn't make me feel good, but to make sure that you have fucking clean drinking water and so does everybody else. So it's like a right. We never have to think about it ever. And you have that. Someone says, I don't understand. Why does it have to be like this choice between we have to do all that or drinking water? Why can't I just have the drinking water? I'm like, because no one fucking created that system. Who created the system that guarantees you happiness, that gives you the right to it? Who created that system? So if you have somebody who's saying like, well, it's like you see like someone saying, thinking that maybe me or anyone would be saying you shouldn't be happy. And what I'm saying is, okay, look, all four of us, well, how many of us? 6 of us, right? I'm saying, look, guys, I've just realized that we're in a reality where none of us have a right to happiness. Like, I'm not okay with that. Like, I want to be happy just like you. I want you to also be happy. I want everybody in this world to be happy. It's just, I've just realized no one's actually happy. Even the ones who act like they are, they're not. Even the ones with all the fucking money, they're not actually happy. Like and people are just pretending. Yeah, you all agree, right? Okay. But what I've realized is we can all be happy. But we have to create a system first that makes sure everybody has their basic needs, because when that happens, nobody will feel like the world is against them. Nobody will feel like they're less than. You can't be happy in a relationship if you are allowing yourself, or you've been programmed through your experiences to feel that you're less than the other person. And what's interesting is some people sometimes, I know, will look at Katie and I, and because we push back so much on feminism and all this bullshit, right? They're like, oh, you've just dominated Katie and you've enslaved her and all this stuff, right? Here's the thing. That's what was going on before we challenged all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
It was just constant back and forth emotional manipulation on both sides. And I was talking to somebody the other night who really needed some support with this point. And I was giving him this story about Katie and I. And I was like, many years ago, the way Katie and I would talk is like, I would talk, as I do. But then she would say, like, imagine if one of you took me aside after the podcast and you were like, hey, Cameron, what you're saying, it's fine. It makes sense and everything, but we just feel like you never let us talk. You know what I would say? What would you expect me to say?
Talk the fuck up, dude. Like,
Just fucking talk. Like, when am I cutting your mic off? Like, I interrupt you, interrupt me. And sometimes you guys interrupt me and then I stop talking because I'm like, oh, like, let me hear what you have to say. Like, that's just sometimes how a conversation works. And some people are more dominant and some people are more submissive or passive or whatever you want to call it. And it's not that, and sometimes it works. Like, some people just don't talk a lot, like, but they direct things or they do other points. So if somebody didn't really like talking very much, then they probably shouldn't be on a podcast, right? But when I would talk with Katie, for example, there would be this point in our relationship where she would say to me sometimes like, you're not letting me talk. And I would say to her, just fucking talk. I'm not stopping you from talking. I'm not going to let you talk. You're going to have to just fucking talk. Because if I'm letting you talk, like, that's you accepting that I am somehow oppressing you when I'm not. And what's interesting is as she walked through that point, I realized, because part of the pattern was within myself also, because she was accepting that pattern within herself. I was also accepting a pattern within myself of like, I'm fucking smart. I'm smarter than everybody. I'm smarter than you. I don't need to fucking, if you have something to say, fucking say it. I don't care. But when Katie started walking through that point and not suppressing herself, you know what I realized?
she's fucking just as smart as you are.
She's just as fucking smart as me. And that's not like in a placating way. Like, oh no, guys, she's just as smart. No, like, she's just as smart. There's things where like, I'm looking at something I want to do and I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to figure this out like she can. And I'm gonna bring it up to her and she'll figure it out. And it's like, dude, that would have taken me way fucking longer with way more effort and way more mistakes, but she figured it out and now we have the best way to do it. Right? Like getting this property and so forth. Like if it was up to me, it would have been much more difficult. But if you're like, go talk to the realtor, bam, I can do that. You know what I mean? So we have a balance point within that. So why did I bring that up? There was a specific reason why I
supporting
brought
somebody
this.
with that point. And if we always see each other as unequal or less than, it will never be able to.
Yeah, I don't know why I specifically brought that up, but oh, well, it's like, are we here to pursue happiness or are we here to change the system?
Change the system.
Even if your answer was pursue happiness, what would you have to do first?
Right.
Change the system.
And why can't you experience happiness from changing the system?
Exactly.
You know, the best times when I've experienced the most growth within myself, no, well, not, I wouldn't say the only times, it's just like the really specific times where I've really moved forward. And there's been times where this hasn't happened, but in many cases it's where it has, is when Katie fucking essentially yelled at me. Essentially told me to wake the fuck up, stop being weak. It's not acceptable what you're doing. Fucking stop, get your shit together. And then, she's right. Okay. All right. What am I doing? Why am I accepting this point? It's okay. It's because I'm just afraid of this. I'm not thinking I can do this, whatever. Okay. Let me get on my techno tutor. Let me put that in here. And then the next day or whatever, I go back to Katie and I'm like, you know what? I appreciate you doing that because you're right. And now I've corrected the point. I don't do it in that moment. Like, oh, you're right. I'll fix it. I promise. No, I just stop talking. Just stop talking. And I go and I look at it for myself and I do that to her. Now, if a man yells at a woman, that's not good, right? That's what they say. But it's okay if a woman does it to a man. Right. But I don't agree with that. I'm just saying that's what people think, right? Why? Why is it not okay for a man to yell at a woman?
Because he's oppressing her and he could.
Because we're assuming, right? We're accepting the fact that the woman is weaker than the man.
Right.
Why is it that if a man and a woman break up, what do you automatically assume?
He wasn't good to her.
Abusing her.
Abusing her, what else?
Cheating on her.
Cheating on her.
Cheating on her,
Right?
beating on her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, actually, though, it's the woman. Look at the statistics.
Oh shit, dude.
It's
I'm like, what, are you
usually
sure,
actually
Brittany?
the woman. Most divorces are initiated by women.
Mhm.
And it's not because the man was cheating. More infidelity comes from the woman.
Mm. Funny. In my
So-
personal experience, I've seen that. I don't mean me, but I'm just talking.
No, I know, but I'm just looking at the point like, yes, like my personal experience bears that out 100%. I remember when I was a kid, my dad came home and my mom was fucking some other dude. He came home from Germany from the army.
Fuck.
And I was already calling that guy dad because my mom told me to. But guess who's been married 9 times? My mom or my dad?
Your mom.
Your
My
mom.
mom. My dad divorced her, got remarried, and he's been married ever since and has another kid, and they're still married and everything. I'm not saying he's a great guy or anything. I'm just saying people would assume it would be the other way around, right? Why do we assume men are the problem and women are always good? Does that mean that no, it's women are the problem and men are always good? Absolutely not. Everybody's fucked. Everybody has a fucked up childhood, right? Everybody's fucked and everyone's
equal.
trying to fuck each other.
Right.
Well, where is the equality actually? If you say that, you know, and here's another point, people are not going to like this. How many times does a man end up hitting a woman because she was nagging the fuck out of him?
Probably a significant amount.
Now, are there many cases where a guy is drinking and he comes home and he beats up his wife? Absolutely.
But build the context around that point. Why is that?
Well, why are they in the relationship in the first place? Why did they get into that relationship?
Off of
Well, I
feeling.
married him because I loved him and he was such a good man, but then he turned evil all of a sudden. And it's like, really? Because every time he comes home, you're like, God damn it, Billy, don't put your boots by the door, damn it, put them outside. Ah, you're such an idiot. You know, like, God damn it, I put dinner on the table. Why aren't you saying thank you? Or, oh, why do you want to watch the game? Why don't you ever talk to me? You know, like, I'm just saying, people don't look at the other side. Like, I remember when I was 7, must have been like 5, 6, something like that. Kindergarten, first grade. And I remember my mom throwing plates across the room at my dad. And my dad was not abusive towards her, like physically. Like they fought. But I remember it was like she would always be fucking manipulating the shit out of him, like emotionally. Was he being weak? Absolutely. But I'm saying it wasn't a case of he was being overly aggressive. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
He wasn't being like a physically dominating, aggressive person and like beating her up and stuff. And that's why she was just trying to defend herself. Like she was fucking crazy. And she was always trying to pursue happiness. She was always leaving me. I'll tell you a story. When I was 2 years old, my biological parents got divorced. I think my mom already had a side piece. I don't know if that's the case. I think they were already doing this.
A side piece sounds like a weapon.
But
Sounds like something you'd get at KFC.
when I was like 2.5 or something like that, my parents split up and my mom was already with an, they must have been already doing stuff because my brother's 2.5 years younger than me. So how is he 2.5 years younger than me? And my parents got divorced when I was 2.5, right?
Huh.
So in any case, they got divorced. I don't know the whole story, but my mom remarried and then my stepfather adopted me. So sometimes I tell people I'm adopted, but not in the sense most people think where it's like, you don't know your parents. Like my mom is still my mom, but my stepfather became my legally adopted father. And on my birth certificate, it says he's my father. Like you wouldn't even know I had an actual different biological dad, although I look exactly like my biological father, right? So then when I was like 6, 7, something like that, my parents at that time got divorced. My mom moved away to California with her boyfriend. That was the guy that she was fucking when, like I told you, my dad came home from Germany, right, from the military. She moved away and she told me, I remember I was living in an apartment with her, which I was mostly just by myself, me and my brother. And I remember she went in my bedroom and she sat down on the bed next to me. And she was like, Cameron, I just want to tell you something. Like, you're my best friend. And I love you. And you know, I'll always love you. You know that, right? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you know, you're my best friend. And I've always told you that you'll always be my best friend. I was like, yeah, okay. I remember I'm like 6 or 7, right?
Yes.
And she's like, well, I'm going to be, you know, Daddy Craig. That's what she called her boyfriend, Daddy Craig. Like, ugh. It's like Katie would say, gross, right? She always says, that's gross. Daddy Craig and I are going to be moving to California, right? And I can't take you and Trevor with me, that's my brother, because whatever reason she gave me, but eventually I'm going to come back for you. So for a while, you're just going to be with John, your dad. Okay. But then I'm going to go out there and then you can come back and you'll be with me. Okay. And I was like, okay. Right. And then I remember the day that she left. It was like I was at Craig, her boyfriend, or I don't know if they were married or what, but at that time, but we were at her house. My father came to get me and I was in his truck and the window was up and my mom was walking away and I was screaming, crying, like, Mom, please don't leave me. Like, don't go. Like, cause I knew at that moment, that's when it was like, I wasn't going to see her again. Right. And then at that point I moved in with my dad. And this is okay, you want to hear something fucking weird? I moved with my
I
dad.
already was listening to something fucking weird.
Yeah, exactly.
No, dude, no. That's not even got weird yet. So now I'm with my dad, with my half brother, Trevor, who's his biological son, right? Okay. Guess where we're living?
In your stepdad's, who is now your dad, his wife's ex-wife.
No, not that yet. That would be amazing. No, with my biological mother's parents.
What?
So my adopted father and my brother, we're living with my maternal grandparents, like the mom who just left us and my husband and my dad. And we're living at my grandparents' house because like they're kind of like good people. You know what I mean? You know, like
Right.
there are good people and there are bad people in this world. There's good people and bad people. Now, everybody's fucked. Everybody's evil. So I'm not like, oh, they're good people. So they're, you know, like everyone's fucked, whether you're good or not. I mean, Bernard has a great audio. I'm sure you guys know which one I'm talking about, where he talks about the person who he knew who was like a really good person and everything, but still was fucked when he died, right? Because he didn't change the system. It doesn't matter how good you are. I don't pretend like I'm a good person. I hope none of you do. Give up all hope, right? Okay. So anyways,
I also don't pretend.
I hope and pray. I know. I love it. That's what's so cool about it. Anyone can talk shit about anything we say or do. And it's like, oh, did you think I was trying to be like a nice guy or something? Or like I care?
So, somebody told me
nice
today, they were messaging me. They're like, do you have any flaws? Like, or do you think you're perfect? I'm like, what? I have plenty of flaws. There's plenty of things I'm still working on.
Dude, I saw
Like,
this
okay, just 'cause
interview.
on your Facebook.
I saw this interview with Trump one time and they were like, do you have any weaknesses? And he was like, yeah. And she goes, well, what are they? And he goes, why would I tell anyone that?
Yeah.
He was like, why would I tell anybody? Like, he didn't give a shit. Like, he didn't have a problem admitting, yeah,
It
obviously I have
was funny.
weaknesses.
It was
Why the
funny
fuck would I
because-
tell you what they are?
This person was like, well, because it looks like you portray like you're a flawless being. I'm like, so wait, you're going off my Facebook to determine who I am? Okay. And I was like, so do you. They were like, ha ha ha, how come? I'm like, do you not know what social media is? Like, I was so confused, but I was like, if you actually watch my videos, I talk about what I've been through and all my problems and all that stuff. Like a open book.
Yeah.
I have nothing to hide.
That
You know what I mean?
person is just jealous.
I know
That's
that.
all it is.
And they're just participating in a lot of fear right now. But this is what I'm talking about in terms of having integrity or something being whole, right? It's like, I don't have to hide anything.
But at the same time, there's honesty and there's self-honesty,
Right.
right? Like, I'm not going to share all my bank passwords.
Right.
Like, there's
Yeah.
things that I talk about with Katie and that we do and go through that I'm not going to share. Like, that's okay to also have a private life. But there's nothing about my private life and my public life that is
I'm not living in a way that I'm afraid that some information is going to get out
right.
about.
Well, you made it this far. If you're wondering what's going on, I made a mistake and I deleted the second half out of the podcast. Yeah. Feel disappointed? Now imagine what it must feel like for a child to not grow up with both of their parents. We'll try again next week. See you guys then.